PRRS is still the main challenge on our farms. When you think you've got PRRS under control, you have PRRS again. So, the fight goes on, and we keep standing by your side, as we have done for 10 years now. We have sold 215 million doses, with a supply guarantee over these last 10 years. We have demonstrated protection against highly pathogenic strains, and our hypodermic needle-free device represents a step forward in intradermal vaccination against PRRS. The fight against PRRS goes on, as does our commitment.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. Again, thank you very much for this invitation, for giving me this opportunity to share the information with you for the HIPRA team. Thank you very much for that. And the PRRS is very important pathogen that we talk about today. So hopefully my talk can make some contribution to all of you who spend your time to come to the Seoul to share your important time. So today I'm going to talk about keys and the tips for an easy and efficient biosecurity. The contents that I'd like to cover today are as follows. I'd like to start with the fundamentals and the philosophy of the biosecurity, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Then I'd like to suggest and share the information on some practical tips of biosecurity. And we use that as PRRS as an example, but it can apply for any other pathogens like ASF or CSF or PED, you name it. Then if time allowed, I'd like to introduce some recent research information on biosecurity as well. Then I'd like to wrap up on the conclusion and the summary. So I always start with emphasizing this. So swine disease control and prevention should be a comprehensive approach. It's not only a one-to-one approach. You always have to have those 5 components, always. Doesn't matter if you are dealing with PRRS or CSF or SF, it's a fundamental when you are thinking about the prevention of the disease. You need those big 5. 1, herd immunity. You can achieve that by vaccination as such, but this is not the only one. You need other 4. Peak flow and management, that might contain of the building design as well, which we may not spend much time in this time though. And the third one is the biosecurity. That is what we focus on my talk, but remember this is only one of those 5. And other speakers, I'm sure that they are going to touch the other aspects as well. But I will focus on biosecurity. That does not necessarily mean that biosecurity can do everything. And the 4th one is the monitoring and the testing. And last but not least, communication, education in any layers. For example, this meeting is part of the communication. But maybe having a communication at brand level, that could be also an important part of the communication. So we get the information like this, but if you do not share, it does not make any sense. So I emphasize the importance of that. So what's the biosecurity? If you look at if you take a look at the dictionary, it says that biosecurity is the protection and security of the susceptible animals, herds, from the introduction and transmission of infectious pathogens. So that sounds very familiar to you and me. So I believe that we are all on the same page when we are talking about the biosecurity, okay? To me, I don't think it is too much to say this. Biosecurity is the only way of true proactive approach of disease prevention. The reason why I'm saying that is that we are all understanding we are living in a very competitive swine market, as Robert explained at the morning. Our world are very, very tough nowadays, especially. We are dealing with high feed cost, and we are dealing with the volatile pork price depending on the countries, and the trade, importing and exporting. So we all share all challenges and even diseases too. And the impact of transboundary diseases such as African swine fever, FMD, classical swine fever, Dr. Yan clearly explained very well at the morning. That diseases make a huge, huge impact on our world. I don't have to explain to that. Not only those big guys, but also the impact of economically significant diseases such as PRRS, PED, which have been already explained very well by Dr. Yan in this morning. Those diseases are bad enough. So I'm telling you that, we are already living in a very tough world, very, very challenging. So we do not really have any space to fight against the disease. What's the real win against the disease? Do not fight. Don't let them into your world. So that is real win. That's what the biosecurity does. Okay. I always try to make things as simple as possible. And this is what the biosecurity is to me. So you need 5 instances. Every time you do whatever that comes to biosecurity, any tiny action that you make in your farm or whatever, that your action that regards to biosecurity has to contain those 5 essences. Number 1, biosecurity has to be science-based. It's not a magic or it's not a religion. Well, maybe religion is science, but I don't know. But what I'm telling you is that biosecurity is not like mental things. This is based on science. This is real. And the biosecurity also has to be practically feasible. That means that it has to be simple and organized that everybody can do. And the biosecurity has to be effective, that you can show cost and the benefit. When we are thinking about the vaccination, we always care about cost and the benefit, right? So why not the biosecurity too? Biosecurity has to be the same theory. And the biosecurity has to be committed to continue. So execution plays a very important role. If you do perfect today, and if you give up tomorrow, it doesn't make any sense, does it? So do what you do today, you have to do forever. That's what the biosecurity does. And last but not least, biosecurity has to be measurable. No measure, no manage. We always say that. And the biosecurity is the same too. We do benchmarking for breeding performance or feed conversion rate, whatever, right? So we are very familiar with that. But what about the biosecurity? Do we have a good benchmarking system for the biosecurity? I doubt it. But we really have to measure the biosecurity in that manner, and otherwise, we are not able to survive in this tough world in the future. So having said that, we understand that we need 5 those essences of the biosecurity. Now I'd like to take a look at the structure itself of the biosecurity. If you look at the structure of the biosecurity to make the things simple, the biosecurity consists of the 3 components. Number 1, the first component is we call the external biosecurity, which we traditionally called biosecurity between farms, but nowadays we call that as a bioexclusion, which is to prevent new introduction of pathogens into a farm. That sounds very familiar to you, right? But this is not only one single structure of the biosecurity, you need another one, which is the internal biosecurity that has been traditionally called as the biosecurity within farm. Now we call that as a biocontainment, but basically the meaning is the same, which is to minimize the transmission of pathogens that already exist within a farm. So you need those 2 structures, the blood and the flesh of the biosecurity. But again, don't forget the third one. As I told you, if you keep out disease perfectly, And if you contain your pathogens into your farm perfectly today, but if you can't do that tomorrow, then there's no point. So you have to continue. You have to maintain, it has to be a sustainable event every time that you're doing the biosecurity. That's why I emphasize that third structure of this execution, achieved by monitoring, audit, and education and communication. Don't forget the third one. I told you that biosecurity is science-based. So first, we have to know where your enemies come from. If you are dealing with the pearls, you have to know where the pearls come from into your farm or your business unit. So if you look at the textbook, the transmission route is categorized to two categories. One is the direct transmission, which is also called porcine vectors, that basically pigs and semen. So live animals. So we are living in a pig world, so it has to be pigs and semen. And another category is called indirect transmission. That is also called non-porcine vectors. That is pretty much everything but pigs and semen. So you can see here needles, personnel, coverall and boots, fomites, transport, carcass disposable, birds, rodents, wild animals, insects, manual processing, water, air, and feed. I'm just reading them all. But anything that you think that can transmit or transfer the virus or pathogens into your farm, you can call that as a indirect transmission route. Again, biosecurity science, I described those transmission routes not from the air or the way that I'm thinking. This is proven. If you go look at the literature, you realize that there are some people who are doing tons of research to actually prove that. So we change needle, we quarantine, we test the pigs, we test the semen, we change needle, we change coveralls because we know that if you don't do it, you can transmit the virus, you can transmit the pathogens. We are changing coverall just because, I mean, you are feeling good. No, this is not the biosecurity means. You change the boots and you change the needle, you change those, all the activities that you do in biosecurity, you have the reason to do it. And you really have to convince not only yourself, but your staff that actually make that biosecurity protocol every day. You have to convince them to understand why you are doing this. And the science can help. So for pigs, we quarantine and we test new introduction of goods. That is very familiar strategy to do. So maybe it doesn't surprise you anything. And the boar stud, ideally has to be a negative stud for major pathogens, including ASF, CSF, and PRRS, and PD, such stuff. And this picture shows the biosecurity bench we call to make the process of changing boots practically feasible. As I pointed out, the 5 essence of biosecurity, you have to make the system simple enough for people to make it happen. And changing coveralls and changing needle. And probably the later speakers may refer to the new technology of the needle syringe. So probably that might be a good tool for the future when you are thinking about the biosecurity too. And the fumigation room or UV light box that can help to disinfect any fomites that we call that we might bring into your farm. So we do those intervention strategies according to the transmission route that we already understood, right? But also it depends on the pathogens that you are dealing with. For example, influenza virus. We know that people can shed the virus, influenza virus, and the pigs are susceptible for that. So probably taking a shower itself may not be good enough. When we are talking about the influenza, if you are already infected, if you are shedding the virus in the farm, probably shower does not do a good job. So it really depends on the pathogens. Another example is that because we are talking here in Asia, let's put an example like Japanese encephalitis virus, which is the insect-borne virus. So the insect can play more role can play more important role than the other pathogens. Washing trucks, but the science proved that washing and disinfecting is not enough. You have to make it dry as much as possible. Drying is the most efficient killing aspect for the pathogens. So, saying just keep that truck clean is very easy to say, right? But in detail, you really have to pay a lot of attention in detail based on the scientific data or evidence. And the disposable cover, the carcass disposable. And the rodents control and the bird proofing net. So if you look at the each individual intervention strategy for the biosecurity, I don't think it surprises you much if you are not doing. But what I'm saying here is that pay more attention and make sure what you're doing is based on science so that you are not wasting your time and the money. You have to allocate your investment in area that is really important, that is really efficacious. And also another point that I want to make here is that, for example, this carcass disposal and flies or rodents, those transmission routes may not be necessarily acting individually. Sometimes it can collaborate. Sometimes they can be integrated together. For example, if you leave the dead animals like this, and maybe rodents, mice, or houseflies are just gathering there, and maybe they are the ones who are transmitting the viruses, not the dead bodies. So this is kind of sequence event. So don't take each individual event that is one by one. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's comprehensive approach. I already emphasized that, but I can't emphasize this enough. If you do it like today, and if you give up tomorrow, then this is almost same meaning that you didn't do anything. You have to commit that biosecurity is the continuous process. So you have to make your protocol that is feasible enough that everybody can do today, tomorrow, and forever. So we use not only the commitment, but we use audit and the monitoring to make that as a system. Also, another component that I mentioned is the biosecurity has to be measurable. So I'm not going to go too deep into that tools, but I just want to let you know that those tools are available depending on the country. So maybe most famous one is the tool that is called PRRS that has been widely used in North America. Maybe not anywhere because they are pretty much done, but the concept is there. So, and if you look at Europe, probably some of you may be more familiar than I am, but there's the tools that are called BioCheck, which is embedded by the university in Belgium. And we in Japan developed the biosecurity measurable tool that we call the BioAsset that is adapted to achieve that we modified those tools to be able to adapt the characteristics of the Japanese swine industry. So I'm encouraging you here, if you are not doing anything, I'm not telling you that you have to use each one of tools, but you really have to do something by using that kind of tools to make sure that the biosecurity that you are doing is measurable. And again, I'm not spending too much time to just explain the bioasset itself. I just want to show that the biosecurity has to be measurable. And remember, I told you that biosecurity is science-based. So it's published there, and there's a lot of tools out there, but you need to verify that those tools are based on the science. Now I changed the gear a little bit. I'd like to share some recent research information on the biosecurity today as a cutting edge. This slide is from the Dr. Scott D, and Dr. Gordon Sprung from Pipestone Vet Services in the United States, if you're familiar with that. They proposed the term that it says next generation biosecurity. What does it mean? According to them, the next generation biosecurity means you have to do all the basic biosecurity intervention that I just described. Needle cover on the boots, trucks, and the formats and everything. If you are doing this right, almost 100%, but still they in the United States have been experiencing the sow farms broke with pearls, especially high virulent pearls. So they quickly realized that probably this is not enough. So based on the assumption that we are 100% doing right on those basic biosecurity, probably you still need more. What are we missing? Two. One is air, and another one is feed. So they proposed that, actually Dr. D and Dr. Sprung are already retired, or very close to retired. So this is kind of message for the young generation to lead the world swine industry to encourage to improve the biosecurity, because they say that the old age, we are only dealing with the boots and the coveralls and maybe trucks also, but probably the pathogens that we are dealing with today are much, much worse than we used to 10 years ago. So we have to improve too. So recent research convinced more and more the risk of the aerosol transmission of certain pathogens are real. So this is not a story or fiction, or this is not from movie. This is what's happening. And FMD is a good example. In Asia, we already know that. And the PRRS, if it is a high virulent strain, yes, you can have the PRRS virus transmitted by air too. And the mycoplasma pneumonia, influenza, PD, may be short distance, but they have been also proven to be transmitted by air. Once again, I'm just telling you, it's not a story or it's not a fiction. It's scientifically proven that PRRS and the mycoplasma can transmit by air long distances in the field conditions. I can tell you because I'm the one who did that. So in the field situation, PRRS can be transmitted by air for up to 9.1 kilometers. And I'm not showing that, but we actually have the same map for the mycoplasma pneumonia too. So this is science evidence here. And this is what the US guys are doing now. I know some of you may be already familiar with that, but we call that as air filtration. So not only increase the awareness of the risk of air, at the same time, we spend a lot of time to do a research and investigate the solution to reduce the risk of the air. And this is the tools and the technology that we have at this moment. This is a breathing herd. And obviously this is a mechanical ventilated system. And I'm not going to spend too much time to just explain this, but I'm just telling you that this is the intervention strategy to do this. Having said that, though, I also want to make sure to emphasize that do not always blame on air. Because every time I'm sharing the information about the air risk of the pathogens, some people from the audience said that, okay, I gave up. If disease can transmit by the air, then everything that I do doesn't make sense. No, what you say doesn't make sense to me. Because risk of aerosol transmission of certain pathogens is real. However, that does not make the importance of all the basic biosecurity practice, as I mentioned, including people or formats or transport, you shouldn't neglect them. Because we know that probably certain pathogens, such as PRRS, can be transmitted by air for sure, but probably needles or cover on the boots and trucks, vehicles, they have more risk than the air. So realizing the risk of the air does not give you the excuse to give up on all your effort that you are doing in the swine dense area. So don't use air as an excuse. So once again, you realize that biosecurity always has to be a comprehensive approach. Okay, I'm running out of time. So feed, I think this is the hot area on the biosecurity research right now. It used to be neglected as a risk of pathogen transmission. However, I think that was a PED that made a huge paradigm shift in the United States, especially. And we've done a lot of research, and we have seen a lot of research. So I would encourage you to go through each one of the research data to convince that feed can be a risk to transmit certain pathogens. But we also have some solutions to reduce the risk. You know, if you think that ingredient of the feed, you think there is a risk, don't use them. If there's another alternative. Or we are doing heating and pelleting quite often, and we put the downtime for the feed themselves. And also, I think this is a very hot topic right now, that feed mitigants, which is kind of feed additive products that are based on organic acid or whatever, that have the function to inactivate the virus or certain pathogens if feed are contaminated. And we do a lot of audit on the feed mill. So there are some commercial products that have that function. I'm not going to go through that too much. So what really scares me when I'm talking about the feed risk is that, you know, feed risk is not only domestic risk, but also it's a transborder risk too, because we import and export feed a lot, do we? So just make long story short. So Dr. D's research team in the Pipestone developed the transboundary model to show that PD survived in the subset of feed ingredients during the simulated shipment from China into the United States. And that was bad news. But the good news is that the mitigants that I just introduced are equally effective in neutralizing PD independent of ingredient of time. And the PD was not the only one. And the further study shows that the FMD and the African swine fever and the PRRS virus can act the same. So here are the some scientific evidence to just prove what I'm saying here. So I'm running out of time. So but I really encourage you to go through each one of papers if you're interested. We always say this. I mean, this is a quote in English, but I'm sure that you have the same quote in each country. You really don't believe if you don't get to see it, right? So I'm talking a feed risk now, but this is a real. And actually, this is a case report that suggests that the feed risk in Mexico. This is not an experimental situation. This is a real case report. Another one from China. And another one, it's a Seneca virus, but the paper didn't say, but this is actually Chile in South America. So all the information that I described by feed or whatever, my point is that I want you to realize that biosecurity requires regional and global collaboration because we all share the disease risk. This map always scares me. At this moment, Japan and Taiwan are the only two countries that are African swine fever free, and we don't know when. Maybe question is not if, question is when. So we all share the disease. Therefore, we also have to share the knowledge and the information and the collaboration in Asia. So I really thank HIPRA for giving this opportunity to do this. So conclusions and a summary of my talk. As I already mentioned, biosecurity is the only way of the proactive approach of disease prevention. I already said that. And don't forget those big five. Biosecurity has to be 1, science-based. 2, has to be practically feasible, everybody can do. And 3, it has to be effective, that you can show cost and benefit. Number 4, you have to commit to continue. Today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, and forever. And it has to be measurable. Dr. Yan and Robert already explained very well in the morning that, ASF, FMD, classical swine fever, PRRS, you can name whatever. The biosecurity should work against any pathogens. And even for the pathogens that are unknown today, but that might be coming 10 years from now or 20 years. So biosecurity is really the one that is left for the true active disease prevention. With that, I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues from my company, Dr. Mio Yoshida and Yoko and Momoko. All right, thank you very much.